Hello, welcome to another episode of eBay Scavengers. This is episode number 89.
That's right, and we aren't here to waste anyone's time.
No, let's go.
Go. Okay, so today we thought we would talk about buying and selling art on eBay. And when we say art, we have a very broad definition of what art is.
Sure, so we include in that paintings, photographs, needlepoint, cross-stitch, any kind of kitsch art.
Prints.
Yes.
Basically, like when you even go to Goodwill, there's always like a back corner and there's a stack of this stuff. And very often people overlook that. And that's the stuff we love.
Yep.
Because we love to go to the things not only that people who buy overlook, but the people who work there, they're putting like the high prices on jeans and like shoes because they think people really want that stuff.
Which they do. And
then like the art stuff, very often they overlook that because they think it's junk or they don't know how to
fake,
price it.
It's not, a real painting or something.
We start to get into that stuff. And really what we did was we just bought stuff that we thought was cool.
Right. I think that is... To start this podcast off, that is the number one rule. You should buy stuff that you think is cool.
And we thought it was fun because we would see like needlepoint and paint by number pictures or just wacky. They call it like outsider art, like amateur art.
Now, I will say I do have an art background. I did go to art college for 5 years. My mom is an artist. My dad is a craftsman. So I kind of have that background in my life.
I did not go to art school, but I just, I know the things that attract me,
right.
And that's how we allow ourselves to buy stuff. Is number one, we have to think it's cool for ourselves because a lot of this stuff we're going to be talking about isn't signed art. It's not like by famous people.
It's like Jay said, kind of anonymous, sort of outsider art, or it was done by a kit,
Yeah, and when we go to flea markets as well and yard sales, there's a lot of it's this stuff too. I mean, art is also like a wood art, old men that like make little wood crafts and stuff.
Right, exactly.
Things like that.
One of a kind. I mean, that stuff's one of a kind.
And I mean, obviously, I know for Orion, aren't you really like hoping one day to find that $1 million painting?
Well, it's funny because we have been like obsessively watching Antiques Roadshow. There's an American version and a British version. The British version's in its like 38th season, so there's so much to watch.
And much better too, I think.
We like the accents. This guy found a painting by Van Dyck, who's a Dutch master painter. And he was like, "Oh, I bought it for $40." You're like, "Oh my God, it's worth $500,000." It just Of course. I totally want to find that one day. I don't think that I will, but whatever.
But normally what we're finding are things, again, for $1 because we love dollar things. And selling them for like $40.
Right.
That's
a good turnaround.
Yeah. And recently, though, we've been willing to pay a little bit more, $20, $40, it's $50, and flipping it for $200 to $500.
Right. The things that we like to find are like old cross stitches, even ones that aren't really that old but have a cool pattern, and I love it when they're signed and dated.
Right. I mean, things from the 70s or
the
60s,
80s even.
It might look funky, might look psychedelic, or look kind of grandma-y.
Yeah, because I like to buy different styles, too. Like, I do like a lot of kitsch. Like, I really like kitschy stuff because, that's what the hipsters, fill their apartments with. Because that's what I used to decorate my apartment with.
And, honestly, it's a fine line that, each of us have to figure out for ourselves between it's so kind of kitschy that it's really actually ugly versus kitschy where it's like cool and like funky.
Now, like you said, it's a super fine line and only you can determine what you think is ugly and bad.
When we say art, what you're thinking of is imagine going to like IKEA. They have a section of artwork because people are, getting apartments and they buy artwork from IKEA, which to me seems so dumb because you're buying artwork that everybody has. So you're selling to those kind of people who are willing to drop $20, $30, $40, it's $50 on a piece of art from IKEA, or they go on eBay and they'll buy a one-of-a-kind thing, because it's pretty amazing if you think about it. We will buy a needlepoint that some person has probably spent 60 hours or more.
Yeah, just hours making.
A month making a handmade needlepoint picture. It's amazing. We'll buy it for $1,
Yeah.
And so it's definitely worth $40.
Yeah. Even if some of those things are, made from kits or whatever, a lot of times we'll have people buy things and be like, I had this same thing when I was little and I want it again, so it's a nostalgia thing.
Right.
So another thing that is kind of mass produced and by a kit is paint by numbers.
And those, I guess, were really popular in the 60s.
Yeah, 50s, 60s, 70s, paint by numbers. I mean, if you're at a certain age, you'll be like, yeah, of course I did a paint by numbers. So some of the paint by numbers that are done really well and they're clean and they're preserved, people pay a lot of money. I have easily made over $100 on a pair of paint by numbers that were nicely framed.
Especially if they're signed and have a date on them. People love like when it's like 1920,
Oh, there's no 1920s. For paint by numbers?
No?
No.
Okay.
I mean, paint by numbers, like you said, are mid-century, like 50s, 60s, 70s. Yeah, so those are ones to look for. They're really kitschy, but some of them are really beautiful.
And so the other thing you might find are prints or
a lithograph.
And these are, what we look for is if they're signed or have a number on them,
Right.
So that way people can tell that it's a limited edition.
So sometimes people will make an artwork like a painting or a photograph, and then it will be reproduced. And that would be called a print.
Right.
But sometimes there's a limited edition reproduction. So the artist has done the reproduction, and like Jay said, they'll sign it in pencil and number it.
And even if it's not someone famous, because we do what everyone does, it's got a signature, so it's you look that person up.
Yeah.
I mean, 90% of the time, it was just a local artist, a no-name artist. But if there's a number on it, it means that this person only made a certain amount of them, and people like that.
Yeah, I sold, actually, the video where I packed and showed you how to pack artwork. That was a limited edition print by just a local, like, Maryland artist, and it sold almost overnight.
Right, and, and that's a cool thing about eBay is that you have people who are gathering things, and they're collecting things, even if it's just well-known in their local area.
Right.
So that's a great thing about the internet, is that people can find that stuff.
And they're searching. If they're actively a collector of certain, names, even if they're unknown to most people, they'll have a search out and they'll find it.
And the interesting thing, too, is that the frames of these things are often as nice as the artwork.
Right. So last night, when we went to an auction last night, mainly to buy artwork, which is perfect timing for this podcast, there were some pieces that were kind of like, in my opinion, not amazing paintings and photographs. But I bought them just for the frames, because the frames were gorgeous and would cost you a lot of money to buy. So I'm basically just selling the frames. So that's something to look out for.
And, when some of these things have it's glass on it, and that's obviously a pain to pack.
Right.
But people will pay more because if it's been done by a pro,
right,
that's expensive in itself. I mean, if you've ever taken something to get it framed, it's a lot of money. It's $100,
Oh, easily $100. I mean, we had a piece that we had several pieces done just of stuff for our own house, and my jaw dropped when we got the bill. I was like, oh my God.
But, people do it because you're adding value to your house or to your daily life, and it's kind of a permanent part of your house.
And also, like, you're adding value to the piece because you're protecting it. So that's always a good thing.
And we've even sold and bought things where there's damage on it, where the needlepoint has been kept in someone's basement and there's like a little bit of like watermarks on the edges. And strangely, if it's a beautiful enough piece, people don't seem to care, or they'll clean it, or
Right. Now, I did want to touch upon reproduction art, too. Not just limited prints, but sometimes there are, like, famous paintings, that just got printed, hundreds of millions of times.
Van Gogh.
Yeah, Van Gogh or whatever. But if it's a nice print, people still buy that stuff for $20, $30.
On a nice paper.
On nice paper with a nice frame, like we said. So even if you are like, that's just a junky poster, you never know.
And the other thing that we haven't really found a lot of them, so we can't really speak about them, but I do see posters that are sold.
Yes.
People will have like posters from a symphony or like an art or like a festival.
Or an exhibition or a museum or something like
often
that.
People seem to know it's worth a lot, so they already have a high price on them. But I've seen them go for a lot of money. So if you see those are also cool.
So something we bought actually in Amsterdam, we were at this random like warehouse of antiques in this like crazy industrial part of Amsterdam. And we found these prints. They were a map of Amsterdam. And half the prints were on this like junky kind of like glossy poster, like flimsy paper. But the other half were on this thick rag paper, and we looked close enough, and it was a limited edition. It's called an offset lithograph print, and we bought them for $1 each.
Yep.
And we brought them home, and we photographed them, and I just sold one a couple of days ago we have it $120 best offer. I think I sold it for one print for $70.
Yep.
So that was just a fluke. We wanted one for ourselves, and we noticed there was like 20 more, so we just bought them all.
Yeah.
So that's a good example of like, I thought it was cool. I wanted it for myself, and then I just bought all of them.
Yeah, I found at one of our local thrift stores, I was going into one of the parts where I rarely go into because it's just like a big jumble of mess, and I found these posters, and one was like of a kitten. Like hanging from a branch, and like it said, "Hang in there." It was like from the 70s.
No, this is what it says. Hang in there, baby. It's the classic poster that everyone had in their dorm room in the 80s.
And I got it for $0.25, and we sold it almost immediately for how much?
$120. Yeah. And the reason was that is the original Hang in There, Baby poster. And you can't find it anywhere online.
Wow.
So I was like, I did research, right? Because I knew it was like a thing, right? And so we sold it for $125 overnight. So that's a good example.
One thing you will find, and that we find as well, are actual real paintings. You'll find acrylic paintings, oil paintings, watercolors. These are original. And the thing about these is, people often automatically put a higher price on them because they just assume it's going to be worth more because it's
one of a kind.
Original.
Yeah.
So these are the things that we're willing to pay $20 for. I mean, last night we bought 3 paintings for like
$50 each.
Yeah.
The other thing is, here's a good example. Last night at the auction, there were a lot of paintings. Several of them were very ugly. I thought they were just, boring,
Just like landscapes.
Landscapes. They were dirty. I mean, you'd really have to get them cleaned up. So we didn't look at those. We looked at the weird paintings.
I mean, things that we would buy are things that our friends would buy. Something where you put on the wall and it doesn't look like hotel art.
That's a
just
good
like
hotel
super
art.
Generic, like.
Yeah.
You want ones with like people's faces or an interesting scene, or like it's capturing like a period of time that seems really interesting.
Or I love portraits. Portraits are so crazy.
So with paintings, those are the things that we've learned we've had to be careful of. Number one is, not to overpay.
Right.
Like, and number two, to make sure it's relatively clean.
Yes.
Because the thing about oil paintings and acrylic paintings, they can often get really dirty. And we aren't going to clean those and all that.
I mean, and that brings the value down because either someone's going to have to clean it or it looks bad.
When we were first starting to buy our eyes are really, really big.
Yeah.
And we were at an auction and we saw this painting and oil painting, and It was by a named guy that I found on the internet.
Yes, it was signed and it was dated from the late 1800s of a somewhat famous American artist from Washington, D.C.
Well, we thought is really famous. Obviously, we've learned a lot more since then that like people can be known and can be collected, but it just doesn't go for very much. So we actually bought this painting for $400.
Yeah.
And we took it to an urban area to put it into an art auction, thinking maybe we might get a lot of money for it.
Like a proper high-end art auction.
And it was a really fun experience going through the whole process and going to a really fancy auction. And the thing sold for about as much as we paid for it.
It sold, yeah. So we bought it. I think we bought it for like $440.
Yeah.
And it sold for over $500, which with the fees from the auction house, we broke even.
Right. So that's one of those things. So that's when we were like, okay, art's cool, but we're not going to pay a lot for it.
I'm not going to pay $400.
Because I think it's just one of those things where you just have to really know the art world.
Right.
If you're wanting to buy and sell like really high-end fancy art. And we see people buy and sell that stuff at the auctions. It's just we can't be an expert at everything.
Right.
We work more on it's low end, and it does well for us.
Now, Jay found this other painting that I thought was so ugly and weird. It was like this guy, this like clown in a tree holding a kite. I thought it was ugly, but it was weird and kind of cool.
Right.
It was big, too. I was like, oh, God, I don't want to deal with this thing. But we found out that it was this guy from New Mexico who was collected in galleries, and he had just died like that year. So as morbid as that is, that makes something, he'll never paint anything again. So it's very limited. How much did we sell that?
$500.
It was $500. Yeah, we bought it for $30.
Yep.
We sold it for $500, and I packed it myself. That was a nightmare, but that was a good experience, even though I thought it was ugly.
And that's the thing. We do better when we're buying art at auctions that isn't an art auction.
Yes.
It's like a house clean out, and so there's people there that they don't care about art. They're buying tools and things like that, and so the art goes for a very small amount of money, and sometimes
so you
get lucky.
$30, people are like, "Oh man, that's a lot."
and we touch on it, but another thing we love to buy are photographs.
Yes,
photographs sell really well. I mean, we've talked before about buying slides and Polaroids, buying people's albums,
old photo albums
from their family, but even individual photographs, like the old kind,
like the tin types, and they're like silver types. I mean, mostly people who have those know they're worth it, so they're more expensive. But
the whole point is, it's not the fact that it's old. It's gotta be a cool picture. Mm-hmm. Like, we've sold really small portraits of like a lady, a lady. It's just a really beautiful picture.
We bought it for $1. We sold it for, I think it was like $80 or $90.
Because, I can imagine someone buys that and it's making a little scene on their wall, and it's just really beautiful.
When we visited my grandmother down in Florida, and we were staying in this bed and breakfast, and they had the most kitschy, like, basically like everything looked antique. Like they had like fake antiques, and they had these photographs on the coffee table, and they were all like, old photographs and portraits, but they were all fake. They were all like repros, which was so funny to me because I was like, oh man, it would be so cool if these were not just like prints that they found at like Big Lots or something,
Again, we have a big big idea of what art is. Things like handmade like sculptures and stuff. Mm-hmm. We'll buy stuff like that too if it's cool. Like where we are in the country, there's a lot of like of art made out of a wood, like carving.
Right, carvings.
Or what's that where you take a piece of wood and burn images
like wood
into
burnings, and that stuff too is like super kitschy. Like people do it in their garages.
Yeah, and it's a rustic. That's a really good word to use, rustic.
I love that stuff because at first you're just like, some grandpa made a portrait of his dog in a wood burning. But it's so cool because you can totally tell that someone put so much time into that.
And again, it's really the fine line between something that's, kind of outsider art and a rustic that you'd put in like a cabin or something.
Right.
For something that's kind of really... Just like when you go to whatever it's called, was it Country Buffet or what's that place
Cracker
called?
Barrel.
Cracker Barrel, like something that'd be on the wall of Cracker Barrel.
Although I will say at Cracker Barrel, they do put real antiques on the walls. Those
True.
are not reproductions because we've asked them about that. So
I don't know. I mean, again, if there's something that you're gonna fall in love with, you're gonna find someone else that will too.
yeah, I think that's the main takeaway. Again, you have to think it's interesting. I mean, like we said last night, we found all these oil paintings from Italian whoever, and we were like, those are so ugly. I just cannot. I don't care. I do not care. I do not care.
And instead, we bought these prints by this Art Deco guy, which is really cool.
Yeah, I was actually hoping that those were real etchings, but I couldn't get close enough to see, but they were just prints. They're still really cool, and they're framed in glass with gorgeous frames, so I'll make my money back, but...
Everything we just talked about buying and selling art is kind of why eBay is different from Amazon, because this is stuff like there aren't easy to search names or brands. It's all about like putting in keywords to attract people, finding they just want interesting, affordable art. They don't want to spend $1 million on it. They just want to spend under $100.
Right.
But that's amazing for all of us that if you can find something for $1 and sell it for $75, that's amazing.
A great profit, yeah.
It's easy to store, or at least, because
relatively.
we just stack it. And then as far as packing goes, that's a real thing that can be a problem. We'll link to a video where we show you how to pack a print that's in its glass and a frame. Also, if you have a problem packing it, you can take it to have it packed at a pro and then just add that as price on to the cost.
So I've done that several times. When there's a piece of artwork that's either super expensive or quite large, I just bring it to the place, and I already know because I'm looking at it, I don't want to pack that. I'm putting a $30 handling charge on it. That's it. That's all you have to do.
Right.
It's not a big deal.
And if you're new to buying and selling art on eBay, just like anything, go on eBay.
Yep.
Do searches, completed items.
Yep.
That's the best way to do it. That's the way I learn all the time.
Yep.
Even today, I will do a completed item search for some item that I just found, and I'll be like, wow, there's like a whole world of people that buy and sell this stuff.
Yep.
It's amazing.
Yep. It's really cool when you find a named artist and you can search for their stuff, but also when you find something that's unknown and really, really unique. I think if you put the right keywords in, people will find it.
Yeah.
It's not unlike everything else you sell.
Yeah, it's not unlike it's one-of-a-kind items,
Right. It's just a different subject.
And I think it's for us, and it's why we call ourselves Scavengers, eBay Scavengers, is because this is so much different than just, buying a bunch of stuff in bulk from China. Phone cords or something, iPhone
phone
cases.
cords. I just bought some of those. Yeah.
People buy them. People make. It's all great. It's business, I'm sure, but it's just this kind of stuff interests us more.
I do it. I honestly do it because I feel like one day I am gonna find the one that they're like, that's where. Oh, that's cool. You bought that for $1. No one else thought it was cool, and it's actually a Dutch master.
$1 million.
But I'm not holding my breath for that. But it is fun to buy stuff that looks cool and other people think is cool too.
Yep. So please, in the comments at ebayscavenge.com, if you buy and sell art, we would love to hear what has worked for you or problems or anything like that. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye. Good luck. Go buy some art. Take a chance.